All right, welcome back to Puerto Rico Life. My name is Jeffrey Holst, and I am very excited to talk to you today about the 8 things. 8 things. It's not one, it's not two, it's 8 things that you need to think about before considering moving to Puerto Rico. All right, so in no particular order, here are the 8 things that I am thinking about right now. I'm sure I'm missing some, and if I am, feel free to put comments below, and we'll try to make a video about those in the future. And I'll probably end up making videos about each of these topics independently at some point as well. And I'll try to remember to go back and link those once I make them. But just to keep you guys up to date, I'm planning on moving to Puerto Rico. I have not, I've spent maybe a total of 10 days in Puerto Rico in my life. Maybe 4 or 5 different trips for a couple of days at a time. I think the longest I've spent in Puerto Rico is 3.5 days. But I have booked for next month, the second half of May and the beginning of June, I'll be in Puerto Rico in San Juan for 30 days. So that's kind of my trial move to San Juan, Puerto Rico. All right, so here's the 8 things without any further ado. So 1, what to do about a car. So before you move to Puerto Rico, you're going to want to think about, do you want to move your car to Puerto Rico? A couple things to consider, import duties and shipping costs. So, and also your car needs to be paid off. I've read that on a number of different blogs that they will actually make you pay your car off before they'll allow you to import it. And the value of the car dictates the amount of tax that you have to pay. So it may actually be cheaper for you just to buy a car once you arrive in San Juan. I'm planning on moving our Mustang convertible. We have a paid off 2014 Mustang convertible with very low mileage. So I'm hopeful that we can make that happen. I haven't figured out the shipping stuff. I haven't figured out the tax and import duties yet, but since we won't be moving for a little while yet, I don't have to have that figured out quite yet. So the second thing you need to think about is, where are you going to live? Now, this is a little bit more complicated than you might think. It's not just, am I going to live in a house or a condo? Am I going to live in a high rise or a low rise or a standalone? Or, I mean, that's part of it. But then there's also like, do you want to live in San Juan, which is what I'm leaning towards, or do you want to live in one of the suburbs outside of San Juan? A lot of expats from the United States like to stay in like Dorado or something like that, which is fairly close to San Juan. But then other people want to move all the way over to the other side of the island, like Rincon or Ponce. And so you got to think about, like, do you want to be in an area where there's a lot of people that speak English? Do you want to learn Spanish? Do you want to be on a beach? Do you want to be in the mountains? So many things you got to think about. I mean, that's a huge topic we can talk about in a future episode. Oh, circling back on the car thing, the third thing that you need to think about is, how do you change your driver's license over? Because if you're going to move to San Juan, you're going to probably want to drive at some point. Yes, you could do Ubers and stuff like that, or especially if you're going to move somewhere else on the island, you're definitely going to need to figure out the driver's license situation. So that's something you need to consider as well. The fourth thing you need to think about is opening bank accounts, registering to vote, all of that kind of stuff that you need to do regularly, registering your car, whatever it might be. But there's all this sort of myriad of like day-to-day activities that you do once when you move somewhere, and you need to start thinking about those. Like, what bank do you want to use? How does that work? Things like that. So we'll try to find out more about that, and hopefully I'll do a video about that as well. The fifth thing you want to think about is, what kind of organizations do you belong to now, and are they important for you when you get to Puerto Rico? For example, I like to go to church, so I go to church fairly regularly, maybe not as regularly as I should, but I'm hopeful that I can establish for myself a regular routine of going to church in Puerto Rico. Now, because I'm a native English speaker, it'll be much more comfortable for me, at least initially, to go to an English language church. So I need to find an English language church. But it doesn't have to be a religious institution. It can be other things too. If you regularly participate in some kind of business meetup, like BNI groups, or maybe you meet with other people in your field and have like a coffee once a week. You have these social things that you do. You need to figure out how you can continue to have that kind of thing once you get to Puerto Rico. So that is the fifth thing. How are you going to socialize? What organizations are you going to join? And things like that. The sixth thing, and this one's super important, is insurance. So now I've read on many sources that health insurance is actually cheaper in Puerto Rico than it is in the mainland US. But a lot of people go to Puerto Rico under the mistaken assumption that they can use their US based health insurance in Puerto Rico. That's just simply not the case. It's a completely different medical system, and you need to get Puerto Rican health insurance. Now, there are some hybrid products that allow you to have insurance both in the United States and on the island of Puerto Rico, and that's certainly what I'm looking forward to finding out more about. So I will almost certainly do additional videos about health insurance and about medical in general, because I think that's a super important topic. Now, so then the seventh topic, 7th of 8, is how are you going to make money? What are you going to do about money when you're in Puerto Rico? Now, there's a lot of things to consider here. There's the tax advantages of moving to Puerto Rico, and some people want to move just for that, and I don't recommend that. In fact, I did a whole video about why you shouldn't move to Puerto Rico just for tax advantages, and I'll put that right up there, right above me, so you can check that out as well. But if you are going to move for the tax advantages, you need to sort through that process. You need to think about, how do I establish a business in Puerto Rico? What kind of business is it going to be? How is it going to qualify? How do I get my grant? All that kind of stuff. You can't just show up and assume that you're going to get that tax advantage. But the other thing you have to think about is, okay, let's say you're just moving to Puerto Rico because you just want to be there, right? Like, you like the ocean, you like the culture, you like the people, you want to learn a new language, whatever it might be, right? So if so, how are you going to pay your bills? What's it going to cost you? What does it cost for rent? What does it cost for, mortgage payment, insurance, all that stuff? So you got to go through and create a budget, and then you have to figure out where you're going to get that money from. Now, if you're independently wealthy, might not be a problem. You might just have so much money, it doesn't matter. But for the rest of us who aren't independently wealthy, we have to figure out how we're going to make money when we're in Puerto Rico. Now, that for me will probably be some consulting work. I'm a lawyer and I have an MBA, and I have clients that I already work with that are in the United States, so I'm hopeful that I can continue to do a lot of that over Zoom and things like that. But we have a variety of different possible ways to do it, and I also have some investments that I can use some of the money from those investments to supplement my income, at least while I'm establishing my new routine in Puerto Rico. Okay, and the 8th and final thing that you need to think about, and just as a reminder, there probably are many more that I've forgotten, and I definitely will try to touch on those if you just put them down in the comments below. But the 8th thing is, do you want to learn Spanish? Yo hablo español. Me llamo Jeff. That's about all I got. I'm not a Spanish speaker, obviously. Now, I've done some videos. In fact, I have a whole playlist, which I put right there, of language learning videos, and I'm just very, 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 very early in that process. I've learned to say the alphabet and sound out the vowels. I've learned that Spanish is a phonetic language. I've learned that verb endings change. It's very complicated, and I got to learn how those work. But the point is, like, I want to learn Spanish because I want to immerse myself into the culture, and I think you should definitely consider that as well as one of the major reasons to move to a foreign nation, to another island, to another place, is so that you can get to know what it's like to be sort of part of that world. So if you want to get along really well in Puerto Rico, I would highly recommend learning Spanish. So the 8th thing you need to think about is, do you know Spanish? And if not, are you willing to learn? Because if you're not, maybe you should pick a different island. I don't know, but it seems like speaking the language native to that island makes a lot of sense. Now, granted, you probably can get by with English. I know people that live in San Juan that only speak English. They probably speak a little bit of Spanish, just passing them out to get around, but they're not immersing themselves fully into the culture by doing it that way. And I highly recommend people try to immerse themselves in the culture. I've traveled all over the world, and whenever I've made an effort to learn their language, even if it's just a little bit, it's made the experience so much better. I've formed deep and lasting relationships with people, and as far away places as Australia, which that one was easy because I speak English, but also places like Cairo, Egypt, and Tanzania, because I tried to learn Arabic, even if it was just a little bit. Tarast Arabi Shoya, right? I speak just a little bit of Arabic because that's what that is, and I'm sure that's probably not even close. But if the point is, I worked on learning a little bit. Same thing with Swahili. Now, obviously, I didn't learn very much Swahili, but I tried, at least please and thank you and stuff like that. So anyway, I highly recommend you work on a language, especially if you're gonna move there. You're not just gonna visit. So I hope you guys are having an amazing day. It is Thursday, April 15th, and only 1 month from today, 1 month and 2 days from today, I will be arriving in San Juan, and I hope to see you all soon.